is my taking.
Hello, family and friends. I'm Lakeisha D. Howard, and I am running as an independent candidate for the Texas House District 124. I am a servant leader in our community who believes in the voices being heard. I am a retired Air Force veteran, as well as a retiree from the Department of Veteran Affairs. For me, this is not about politics and party. This is about our community voice being heard. We can only do that as one. And that's why I have elected to run as an independent versus being tied to a particular party. I am tied to our community, each and every one of you. I want to show transparency and accountability. I want our voices to be heard at our state capitol. I want us to show love and action because that's what brings community together. So vote for me in November 2026 as your independent state representative for District 124. I'm Lakeisha Howard. I love each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to hear your voice.
Well, hello, community. I'm Derek Williams, and I'm a contributing member of the African American Network. And we are continuing with a very provocative and important series, Caring for the Caregiver. We are certainly proud and glad that the African American Network has taken on this subject. It's one that touches so many of us, and if we live long enough, chances are it's going to touch you. And so we thank you for sharing your time, coming into our studio. And today we are very fortunate to have with us Ms. Sharon A. Scott. And Sharon's going to share some things with us. She has cared for her mother. She has a lot of experience in doing so. And we've learned that hearing stories from others can help us incorporate those stories into our own personal life. And so again, I'm tickled brown to be here. And we're going to give Ms. Sharon an opportunity to share a little bit about her role, the things that she learned from caring for her mom in this continuous, provocative, and yet very important series of Caring for the Caregiver. Sharon?
Yes.
Welcome to TAN.
Thank you.
Well, we certainly appreciate you coming. You look real delightful. I like your colors. I grew up around hat ladies, and I know hats, from a cross-cultural standpoint, very important.
Right.
To our society, to our family. Sometimes hats are passed on from generation to generation. So let's not take any hat for granted. There's usually a story behind it, okay? But Sharon, we are delighted to have you here. And as I said, we are so glad the African American Network has taken on this topic in its role in empowering and keeping us knowledgeable about things that we can do to strive to stay healthy. And unfortunately, we have to sometimes hear seamy sides of the story.
Right.
We get strength through our walk. And my philosophy is that the world is not how it ought to be, but the world is how it is. And we learn to deal with that. And I also believe that we must first form in order to perform.
Exactly.
You don't come together as a group. You're not going to get diddly squat done. Okay.
And then
so, Ms. Sharon, we are very glad. So, Sharon, can you let's start off.
Okay. We
have a few minutes to share a little bit about who you are. I'd like to hear that.
Okay. This person that you guys are speaking with, I am, out of all of the children, on the cousins and everything. Between my brothers and the people I grew up with, I'm the only girl in the middle of
Oh,
cousins and
wow.
brothers. And for 4 or 5 years older or 4 or 5 years younger than me, there's nothing but boys.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so
Wow.
I tend sometimes to be a little pushy.
Okay.
Um, they got used to me, and my oldest brother, he's made a comment to me one day, and I'm like, you all just really need to stay off my back. And he started laughing at me. I'm like, what is the problem? He says, well, one thing is for sure, we didn't raise a little punk.
Well, we know.
So that's
Okay.
my personality.
All
It
right.
comes off very much as
Well,
pushy,
thanks for
but
sharing
underneath
that.
it's not like that.
Thank you. A kaleidoscope of personalities. We don't all want to be the same. It'd be a very boring environment, Sharon. But go ahead, please. Huh?
But I'm one of those. Number one, a lot of people may or may not know that I was one of those teenage brides, and I had one son, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But even through that, when my husband at the time, my son's father, we did get married, and we stayed together, I guess, until JoJo was about 5 or 6 years old. And we divorced, but we still had that dynamic of, him, if he wanted to visit or whatever, that was still there. And it didn't have anything to do with my relationship with my son or his relationship with his son. All of that, we worked through it, and I can't remember the exact year. I think it was 72 or so that I decided I wanted to go back to school, because the jobs that you could get without any schooling behind you, that wasn't going to happen. So what I ended up doing was I got my GED, my good enough diploma,
All right.
and worked. And one of the things that was in several different occasions, one of the things that was really, I know, God working in my life the way that he saw my life to be. I was fortunate enough to get jobs, and each job propelled me to a different job, because, where you've learned what you can in that one and there's nowhere to go. So I would move to the next one. So over the course of those years from having that GED until I retired in 2014, my goodness, I retired in 2014, I had jobs that were, my first thing that I wanted to do was be a nurse. And after being in the burn ward at Santa Rosa, the burn ward was on one end, surgical intensive care was on the other end. And I knew that nursing was not for me. And I moved from there. I've gone through being that, being an employment counselor, that I learned a lot of the things that occurred at the time. The fact that being an employment counselor at that time, those were the days when you had to put, you could fill out a resume, and but you had to put a photo on it. And those were the things that went to the employers that, used our service. There were 5 people. It was, can't remember all their names because it's been so long ago, but I have photos of all of us, when the place opened. But what ended up happening was, we lived in an environment then that African Americans or Black, whatever the term may be, you did not expect to get turned down, because, we were pushing forward a little bit with civil rights, and it didn't work that way. And what a lot of times I joke about now is the things that I learned from that job were, when we called, because you canvassed then, you would call and see if anybody needed help. And when we would get that phone, when you got that phone call, and it's like, okay, well, what are you looking for? Well, I need somebody who's a front office type. A front office type meant that they didn't want anybody Black.
Euphemisms. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, because I can see that just your career and the things that you've acquired through of just getting out there and gritting it in. How did this prepare you for your role as a caregiver?
It was the way that mom and dad raised us. It was like, these are your people. These are the people that you take care of. And then you make friends. And I have a girlfriend. We knew each other from elementary. And when someone broke into her house and she was just out, it was like they didn't do anything to her, but just, she was out mentally. And I went over, I called her boss, and we got her moved. I talked to the people who were living in the complex that I was living in at that time, and they made room for an apartment that was vacant. So she didn't have to think about it.
All right.
So that's something that relationship.
So that was very fortunate for you. What was your mother's condition that required your assistance and care?
When I was living in Dallas. No. Yes, I was living in no, it's not. When I had one of those transfers, I was actually in Houston by then. And what I did was, because it was so close, I would go home on the weekends so that I could see my mom and see my son and see my grandkids, and get that. Yeah. Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
But I would go, and there were things that I noticed about mom, the way that mom had started to take care of her house, how she cleaned, because those are the things, like we had to clean. You had to wipe the top of the refrigerator and mop the floor before the kitchen was clean.
Oh, yes.
And if you made up beds and you didn't sit on them and that kind of thing.
Yes.
But I noticed those things were not the same with mom. And then mom wasn't a hoarder like you see on TV, but she would keep every receipt even though she had the checks. So all of that was going on. And one weekend I had gone to visit, and she was just, just lackadaisical is the best description I had for it. So I took her car and drove her to pick up her groceries and things, because I would go home on a weekend, buy her groceries, come in, fix the groceries, package her meals for the next week.
Ma'am.
And then all she had to do was go. She just had to heat them up.
Right.
And then I would take my sleep on Sunday night and get up early enough to be back at work in Houston area for Monday morning.
Wow.
So I did that. And then one weekend, one of the neighbors, I don't really remember the neighbor who did, but they let us know that mama had an incident, and their mother had 2 sisters in San Antonio at that time. And when they let us know about it, I ran on down, and slowly I could see things that it's like
there's a lot more clearer for you that something was wrong.
Yeah, something was wrong, because that wasn't mom.
What was their diagnosis?
Mom had a little stroke, and she hadn't told anybody about it.
Wow.
So she believed in keeping those kinds of things to herself. But fortunately, I did find out what was wrong. And what we ended up doing, the boys, the brother that's immediately above me and the baby boy, we had a meeting and decided that, we knew that Thanksgiving that when I invited her back to the house, because that's what made me buy a home. I'm like, this is something is happening here, just, And so she stayed over, and she was there that was her first Thanksgiving and first Christmas. And then she stayed through my baby brother and my birthday.
Wow.
And because the 2 of us are in January. So that occurred. And while she was there, something was just still not right. And she insisted on going back home. That happened, and she may have been at home a couple of weeks. And one of my aunts called me and said that mom was in the hospital. So I went out. Mom was married by the time. That was Mr. Morris, and he was a veteran. So we went out to Fort Sam and everything, and it turned out that not only had she had that, she had gone to visit her oldest brother in Michigan, and she had been in the hospital in Michigan because she had a heart attack.
Wow.
And we didn't know anything.
Didn't even know anything about it.
Didn't know anything about it because she didn't believe in bringing us bad news.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But ultimately, mom physically, after between 1992 and 2008, it was the back and forths. And then in 2007, I had bought the house and gotten it together as much as possible. And we moved her in, and she was with us until February in 2018.
Oh, wow.
So I had her all those years.
Wow. Wow.
And that was when I was still traveling with some of the things of my assignments, taking care of her and taking care of the house.
My goodness.
So,
That's a full schedule.
yeah, and climbing 20-foot ladders at work.
So, Sharon, you've had a full life.
Yes.
You've had a full life, and of course, taking care of mom occupied a large portion of that. Um, there's a lot of people out there listening to the show and in similar situations.
Right.
For you, what was the chief thing that helped you be successful and get through this long period of time? And if you had to just describe something, and realize the element of time takes away some of the finer points, but what would you tell the viewing audience that was so helpful for you in getting through that period and being a caregiver?
I tend to not only tend to, because I tend to then you again, things get written down, things are organized. Those are from the things that the methods that I organized the house and everything else was based on the things that I had learned through the various jobs that I had
So
had.
you incorporated that into your care. Wow. Okay.
If there was an appointment, I live by my cell phone. All my appointments and wake ups are on my cell phone, and it sleeps next to me.
Okay. You're a very organized person. Okay.
To the extent that it probably drives some people crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in your role as a caregiver, it provided you some extra skills to get through these difficult times with
Yes.
mom.
Yes. Very much so. And one of the things that I would say to anyone, there's this balance that has to be struck between you and your parent, because your parent is your parent, and you can't treat them as if they're your brother or your sister. It doesn't work like that.
Okay. All right.
And one of the, in a sense, one of the things that my mother used to love, smothered pork chops, and she didn't have any business with pork chops. With her health issues.
Sure.
So what I would do was I would go to HEB and buy chicken breasts and smother them.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So that she had her smothered food.
Okay.
All right. And instead of putting, a whole stick of butter in some mashed potatoes, they're just things that you have to do to accommodate them.
Brilliant.
And then, like, mom was cute. My mother was a character in a lot of ways. I'll give you an idea of how cute she was. The foods that she would eat, I remember talking to her about not eating her. She didn't want to chew the broccoli because the broccoli was just too tough. I'm like, something doesn't sound right. But then I caught her eating peanuts in her room, in her bedroom. And I'm, you can't do that, Mom. Well, I'm like, but if you can chew these peanuts, why can't you chew your broccoli? So there are ways that you have to present things to them.
Sure.
And
How
she got
creative. Wow.
I mean, it's just things, and because she would, on a mental level, it might be that she would be there that day, or she, or she wasn't.
Sure, sometimes.
And sometimes she'd be very melancholy.
Yeah.
And, my brain is doing this. And even at one point, my boss did allow me he changed the shift. And rather than me work like Mondays through Fridays, my days were a Sunday through I was off on Sunday but not on Saturday. So I had a Tuesday through Saturday
Kind of
shift
extend, give you
that
that extra time.
extended,
Okay.
and it allowed me to be able to do her appointments and take her to a good lunch that day because I would be off all that day. Those are the kinds of things that helped where she didn't feel displaced or feel as if she was a burden.
Wow.
Because that's something that has to happen.
Absolutely. Well, recognizing that this is mom. She may need assistance and help, but this is still mom. And maintaining that self-respect and respect for her. Sharon, I could talk to you for a year and a day, and I can see that you have accumulated so much experience. And the interesting thing is how you used your walk of life and incorporated that in taking care of mom. The example of putting the peanuts and substituting the chicken for the pork chop.
You do that.
That creativity. So what I hear is being creative, also respecting them in terms of where they're at, and not being afraid to push the handle a little bit.
You push just enough. You don't step up. There was no way that I would step beyond that boundary that I grew up with.
But maintaining that respect always. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we can see, we could go on forever. And this is another caregiver that we would be delighted to call back and perhaps delve into some of those other unique areas that she learned to utilize in taking care of a loved one. And we're so proud to have Miss Smith here with us and sharing those very personal things. And you can see how who she is wasn't divorced from who the family was and how she incorporated unique ideas in taking care of mom. So we hope that we've given you another perspective in caring for the caregiver. And we ask you to stay tuned and to continue to watch us as we bring new and insightful perspectives into this provocative yet important topic. We thank you, Sharon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Troubles and sorrows, but I wait till tomorrow. This is my take.
Hello, family and friends. I'm Lakeisha D. Howard, and I am running as an independent candidate for the Texas House District 124. I am a servant leader in our community who believes in the voices being heard. I am a retired Air Force veteran, as well as a retiree from the Department of Veteran Affairs. For me, this is not about politics and party. This is about our community voice being heard. We can only do that as one. And that's why I have elected to run as an independent versus being tied to a particular party. I am tied to our community, each and every one of you. I want to show transparency and accountability. I want our voices to be heard at our state capitol. I want us to show love and action because that's what brings community together. So vote for me in November 2026 as your independent state representative for District 124. I'm Lakeisha Howard. I love each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to hear your voice.